In the Sahel region, ECOWAS's rather unfortunate response to the political manifestations, for instance in Burkina Faso, which has launched a serious fight to secure total independence from those racists of France. Our own continental unity, coherence, is continuing to unravel. Nevertheless, for 35 years, the United States, Comrade Minister, was the single superpower in the world, matched by no one after the collapse of the USSR. At the turn of the century, the 21st century, developed countries in the world were limited to the former colonial forces, plus Russia. The rest of the world, from East Asia to the Indian subcontinent, from Africa to Latin America, were outside the capitalist industrial modernity or simply its mineral base component. But let us go back. Let us recall the proper ideas. You will remember that in the 1970s, it was Mao Zedong, in conversation with Kenneth Kaunda, who argued for a different international relations system, reorganized outside the West-East Cold War idea. He introduced the idea of the three-world theory. Mao argued that the international relations system has three contradictory economic centers or global provinces. In this theory, the first world included the then two superpowers, the United States and the USSR, with Europe and Japan and Canada, as well as Australia. The third world, and that was the second world, the third world comprised of Africa, China, East Asia, the Indian subcontinent, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Today, Mao's China is fully fledged superpower in pure industrial, military, and cultural terms. It is part of the richest countries in the world, the greatest threat facing the United States today. It is part of the rich countries together with East Asian tigers over the last 35 years. India and Brazil are well on their path to become developed countries. In the Middle East, if we exclude African Arab countries and those who were targets of the 21st century US imperialist wars, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Russia, half of that region is argumentatively part of the developed world. If we consider Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, we in the continent cannot point to a single country amongst us with even the prospect of scientific and industrial power. We are at the bottom. And this bottom is not explicable. It's inexplicable. Why? Haunted by, amongst other things, the tragic contradiction related to the fact that we are the most minerally rich continent in the world. So how do we make sense of this contradiction? It is important to underscore this because if we do not answer this contradiction, we are unable to break through from over half a century of underdevelopment. Our conversation is taking place in the radical change that is the industrial civilization in the international system, with the threat to environment standing at its center. The trade wars that are started by the United States signifies the United States' end, or the end of the US's own hegemony in the world as a single superpower for 35 years. but it marks the beginning of a multipolar world. However, what shall be Africa's place in the new changing global system? We will not be able to change the position of our permanent juniority, the condition of being at the bottom of the world, or in a place that Ashile Mbembe calls necropolity. I heard the minister earlier speaking about the self-perpetuating economy of coffins. Necropolitics relates to a place of death, a place of ghosts, the place that is at the center of which is Tedo Strip, the death drive. Self-sabotage, self-mutilation, self-hate, and self-destruction. Our generation must ask the crucial question: how do we turn the leaf? It seems to me that there are three paths that are in front of us in this age of monsters. One is that we will continue in the path of self-mutilation, characterized by disunity, war, corruption, and underdevelopment. Two, we will get dismembered. We will get dismembered. This is very important. We are going to be dismembered into supporting different superpowers in the world. When the trade negotiations with the United States took place over the last 2 weeks, what happened? Africa was not one. Zimbabwe went to negotiate on its own. Rwanda went to negotiate on its own. We could not be united. This is similar, if you remember, to the occurrence of the Berlin Conference, where the then colonial powers drafted these borders that you now proudly defend today as your own borders. The border of Malawi and Mozambique, the border of Malawi and Zambia, the border of South Africa and Namibia. Africans, you Africans, were never consulted as to whether these should be your borders. What that conference did, which was called the Berlin Conference, it can repeat itself, where superpowers gather elsewhere and divide Africa amongst each other because of Africa's inability to unite and come to the international table as a unit. In our age, we will see others take the side of China, whilst others go to the US, and then others go to Europe, and others go to Russia in the coming trade confrontations that may as well become a world fully blown military confrontation. You will remember tonight, in the coming months, the final path lies in the revival of the dreams of our founders, from Nkrumah, Nyerere, and Kaunda, with their ideas of Pan-Africanism, at the center of which is Africa's self-determination and Africa's unity that always presents itself in the world as a united force. You think in the head of Donald Trump there is a Lesotho and a Malawi? You seriously think in that racist, incoherent psychopath of a head there is Egypt that is different to South Africa? Trump sees this continent as a single country with people who cannot run their own affairs. But in the ideas of our founding fathers at the beginning of independence was a resounding call that we must never allow Africa again to be divided. The ideas of Africa's renaissance, advocated by Auntie Diop and later by Mbeki, Kagame and others, at the center of which is African reliance, Africa solving its own problems without the guidance of Europeans. Here we have arrived at Vutimbiko and his ask tonight. He's asking us to raise a movement, a continental movement of people over politics. To speak to the content of this idea, allow me to take a detour to the word of scripture. You will recall that the first murder in the Bible occurred between twins who were born and came from the same womb. You will recall when Cain killed Abel, God then asked him, "Where is your brother?" To which Cain answered, "I am not my brother's keeper." Incidentally, when someone has committed an act of hatred, an act of envy, an act of murder, they feel unaccountable for the humanity of their other. Incidentally, the colonial racist project was driven by hate. White people never felt accountable to the humanity of black people. We must ask, have we not replicated this hatred amongst each other? Have we over the years not also treated ourselves with the same hatred that the colonizers treated us? Neglected and rejected, that we are not finding each other, that we feel unaccountable for the humanity of each other. We feel unaccountable for our children's education. We feel unaccountable for the public infrastructure, for the infrastructure of our hospitals, of our water. Nobody feels accountable to keep the institutions like the schools, like the clinic. It's always someone else's responsibility to keep those institutions in a dignified state and not our responsibility. If you will permit me one last time, let's return to the word of scripture. Those of us who went to Sunday school will remember an incident where Jesus says he had to return to Jerusalem, and there he will suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he will have to be killed. Comrade Minister, you will remember that Peter took him aside. We are told he rebuked Jesus, saying, "Stop speaking like that. Nothing like that is going to happen." Incidentally, it is there where Jesus calls Peter Satan. But after that, he returned to the disciples and said something I think will help us unpack Vutimbiko's philosophy. We are told, then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone amongst you wants to be my disciple, you must deny yourself, carry your cross, and follow me."